And welcome to the show. We are off and running. Here we go. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday, as we've got plenty to talk about. Tennessee, do they have the best quarterback situation in the SEC? I'm going to go ahead and say bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Also, today's tough question, we're going to continue to compare coaches of Josh Heupel's ilk. And I think that basically every coach in the SEC is comparable to Josh Heupel, with the exception of Kirby Smart, who's had an elite amount of success. So other than him, I think you got a real debate over which coach you would take. So we're going to continue that series. It'll be today's tough question, brought to you by Banks and Jones. And we take a look at a guy that you might be familiar with. His name is Lane Kiffin. This day in Tennessee sports history coming up. Tim Banks, the most important member of UT's football team. I think he is, and I think he's more important than Josh Heupel. We'll discuss that, and he might be the key figure in Tennessee's entire athletic department. Tennessee's defensive coordinator is going to have to dial some stuff up this year. He doesn't have as much talent as he did last year, doesn't have as much depth. It has to be a little bit different. Now, his depth's not as bad as it was in 2022, so don't expect a major fall off, but I would be surprised if Tennessee's defense was as good as it was last year. And let's be honest, last year it was really good against subpar opponents. May have been even a little bit overrated, Caleb Calhoun. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. How you doing, Dave?
I'm well. Did you think that Tennessee's defense was at all overrated last year?
No, I think from subpar to par to above average, they were super, super elite. I think when they played two teams out of their element offensively in Georgia and Ohio State, who are just loaded with talent everywhere. And I still maintain that had there been a little bit of creativity entered into those two games by Tim Banks, they could have looked better than they did. They hung with Georgia until the fourth quarter. I mean, Georgia just wore them down. It was just the better team. And so with that in mind, I would say that I think that they were not in a situation where they couldn't hang with anybody in the country last year. I just think that they relied solely on Jimmy's and Joe's throughout the year, and that wasn't going to work against Georgia or Ohio State, who were just so talented all over the field.
Yep, agree with that completely. But I will say I think they were a smidge overrated because of the way they dominated some subpar opponents. But I don't think it's anything that I still think you're talking about a very good defense. Is it one of the most elite defenses of all time in Tennessee football history? Would you go that far?
I mean, we were talking about it during the season, but with the way it ended, no, I can't go that far. I mean, I can't compare it to I know I hate to go here, but you can't compare it to a 98 team that faces a Steve Spurrier offense, holds them to 17 points, and then faces Florida State and shuts down the alleged best receiver in college football in Peter Warrick that year. I mean, it's impossible to go to say that defense last year even semi compares. And we thought it might, but no, I can't go there.
Nope, I would agree with that. All right, let's go ahead and get to today's tough question, brought to you by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, taking care of you. Banks and Jones, they handle all kinds of legal responsibilities, divorce, personal injury. They're there for you. Banks and Jones. Go to banksandjones.com. All right. So with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Let's ask this question. Today's tough question is this. Josh Heupel or Lane Kiffin, you're the athletic director. You have to hire a coach. Those are the two candidates that are on the board. Who are you choosing, Heupel or Kiffin?
All right, I'm going to set up where they each have advantages, and it's going to be the opposite of what I said yesterday between the two. And here's what I mean by that. I think in terms of an X's and O's offensive mind, Dave, surprisingly, I lean more Lane Kiffin than Josh Heupel. I think Lane Kiffin actually is a better – if I need someone to draw up a game plan and be a play caller on the sidelines from an X's and O's perspective on offense, which is both of their fortes, I think Lane Kiffin has the edge on Josh Heupel. I think he's got a lot more versatility in different offenses. I think he can adapt a lot better. So I'm giving him the edge.
Now, wait, why do you say that might surprise some people? Because I think they're both two of the better offensive coaches in the nation, but I would easily take Kiffin over Heupel.
As an X, okay.
Just in terms of offense.
I mean, if you say easily, then yeah. I mean, okay. I think a lot of people would rather take. I think particularly among Vol Nation would think Heupel just because of that 2022 season. But I can get with you if you would easily take Kiffin. I get that. I just understand where people would want to lean Heupel because of the insane video game numbers the offense was putting up under Heupel. Kiffin doesn't run those type of offenses usually. I guess where I'm landing is that here's the thing though. There's a big elephant in the room with Heupel versus Kiffin, which is who's going to establish a better culture that's necessary for winning a title. And I don't even think it's close. I think it's Josh Heupel.
I agree with that. I think he's going to have a team that's going to continue to play hard when some of their goals are off the table later in the season. Now, the one thing that I would have said before NIL and all of that changed is that eventually Lane Kiffin's going to get you in trouble, right? I'm not sure that's the case any longer with all the rule changes. And let's discuss what they've done in the transfer portal. Today's tough question, make it a poll question. Who do you hire, Josh Heupel or Lane Kiffin? And we realize that our fans are slightly slanted towards Tennessee, and Heupel's probably going to win that thing. But I'm curious how many people think it might just be Lane Kiffin. And this is a more mature Lane Kiffin. Let's not talk about 2009 Lane Kiffin. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
Okay. I would definitely take Josh Heupel over 2009 Lane Kiffin, who had a little bit too much ego, thought going back to Southern California he could resurrect things despite the pending scholarship restrictions and all that the Trojans had to deal with. I also would take Josh Heupel over 2009 Lane Kiffin because those guys were a little bit wild. There were a lot of
understatement of the century.
Yeah, there were a lot of bottles of bourbon consumed on Sunday night when the game plan was being created for the upcoming season, to the point in which David Blackburn had to be moved from an administrative role to the director of football operations, which basically meant just keep an eye on these goofballs and make sure they don't do anything crazy. I don't think he was real happy about that move, and I don't blame him. And I know that he was quickly resented by the coaches. But when you start having to do stuff like that and you have to start policing what a 40-year-old man, that's pretty sad. Now, so I would definitely take Josh Heupel over 2009 Lane Kiffin. I'm going to take it a step further. I think they're a wash in the transfer portal. I think they both had success there. Lane Kiffin probably has to be a little bit more dependent, so a little bit more success. But I think Josh Heupel's gone out and got what he needed in the transfer portal. As far as recruiting, I think that they're basically a wash. Now, if you add Ed Orgeron to that staff, like Lane had at Tennessee, maybe I'm thinking a little bit different. But I'll take Rodney Garner as Tennessee's best assistant coach recruiter over any assistant coach that might be in Oxford, Mississippi. So I'm not only taking Josh over 2009 Kiffin, I'm also taking him over 2025 Kiffin. And here's why. You mentioned the culture. I think that is key. Now, I could be proven wrong. Lane Kiffin might be a head coach in college football, and that's exactly what players want. They just want to be coached like professionals. But I still think you're going to have young men that need to be brought up, that need to be motivated, that need to be coaxed through hard times. And I think Josh Heupel is great at that. And again, the culture is absolutely tremendous of what he's been able to build. So I would go with Josh Heupel. It's close. And I've got an awful lot of respect for Lane Kiffin, who I know on a personal level, I think he's matured. I think his dad passing away probably was a factor in that last year as well. But just as a whole, I think he's mature. Now, let me get you to address this. The Twitter, the social media stuff that Lane Kiffin takes part in, is that a sign of brashness? Is that a sign of cockiness? Or is that just good old fun if you're an athletic director? I would tell you, as an athletic director, I would just as soon do without it.
I would too. For Lane Kiffin specifically, I think Lane Kiffin is somebody who, I mean, we're going to talk about Steve Spurrier later in the show, but this is where I actually think they're similar. I put Bruce Pearl in this category. There are some coaches who, they're like players, they kind of feed off the messiness and drama, and it makes them a little bit better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We'll go to, like, whether or not you agree or disagree with Donald Trump's policies, I'm not going to get into that. But like when people are like, he needs to get off Twitter, I'm like, honestly, some people feed off like the Twitter fights. Some people do better. I can tell you this as a writer, as a reporter, as someone who takes hot takes on things. I feed off Twitter wars. I feed off Twitter feuds. It makes me better. I have so much. If I got Tom one day, I have no problem getting into Twitter wars with people and fighting them. And so I think Lane Kiffin is of that mindset that I think he feeds off it and it makes him better.
Caleb just basically asked for more work.
I'm not going to start Twitter wars for no reason.
I know. If Caleb's got time for Twitter wars, there's going to be more on his work plate later this afternoon. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but there's that. I don't necessarily think that directly reflects always culture, but I'll say this with Lane Kiffin specifically. Lane Kiffin is going to get mercenaries a lot of times. Let's take this route. Part of building culture is having, and I hate to be this way, but if you recruit kids from right backgrounds with right support systems, you're likelier to have a better culture, right?
Which Lane did not do in 2009 and would have set him back at least a year because there were more felons than All-Americans on that team.
Exactly. Let me ask you, you're the parent, let's talk about these kids' backgrounds. Many come from lower middle class to poor backgrounds. Their kid is the first in their family to try to get a chance at college, and say you're in that situation. You're a good parent, Dave. You're a very good parent, and your kid's in that situation. Lane Kiffin and Ed Orgeron come to recruit your kid. Josh Heupel and Rodney Garner come to recruit your kid. Where do you want them going for the next 4 years in terms of developing them as people?
Okay, well, as a parent, I would want Heupel and Garner, but let me. That's me.
But the mom makes decisions for the kids half the time, don't they?
Well, that's true, but that's me. But let's add this in there for a second. Do you think Nick Iamaleava was that he would have been okay with Kiffin's brashness if they had recruited Nico? I mean, I think there are some parents that do like that spotlight. And in the case where it's the kid's decision, and I have been around, I would say, this is just me throwing this out there. I would say 25% of the time it's purely the kid's decision, 25% the mom, maybe 40% the dad, and the remainder is like a high school coach or a hanger-on or some guy like that. So I do think they make their own decision. I think the kids could get swept up in that, don't you? That bravado.
Well, yes, they could, but that's why I said, let's do the hypothetical. We're talking the good parents, the ones that don't want to be the superstar, that don't want, the ones that aren't Nick Iamaleava, who I think we can both agree is not a good parent. Okay, so it's
seems a little strong, but anyway,
he cost his kids some money because he was searching for a bigger NIL deal for himself. How does that make you a good parent? Anyways,
okay,
so
I have been told, and I haven't reported this yet, that the agent was the driving force behind that, and maybe Nick got a little too far thrown under the bus. But anyway, more of that will come out as time.
Yes, but they didn't have to jump and transfer and all of that. So the reason I'm saying all of this is to bring up that, like,
and you got to tell your kid to go to practice on that Friday morning.
Exactly.
I'll give you that. I don't care what the agent's doing behind the scenes. He's got to go to practice Friday morning, and he's got to be at the orange and white game, even if he's going to transfer on Sunday. Sorry, that's just me, man.
And also, most parents of recruits they want their kid in the right environment. Bobby Bowden said this one time, and it's one of the smartest things I'd heard a coach say. Because Bobby Bowden, as you know, had the Fulmer thing going. What was Bobby Bowden's biggest advantage? He and Fulmer both were two of the rare coaches in the 80s and 90s willing to go to certain areas that many coaches were just scared to go to, right? To recruit kids. Yes. And Bobby Bowden had this quote where he said, even if the kids come from a really bad background, even if their parents are bad people, most of the time, parents who are bad people, they don't want their kids being bad people. And they may be the most crime-ridden, wrapped up in the worst type of lives possible, but they'll do everything to get their kid out of that life. And so,
are you implying in some shape, form, or fashion that Ed Orgeron showed up to Marlon Wallace's home drunk on a recruiting visit? Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, I'm saying that who, if you see, forget Lane Kiffin versus Josh Heupel, we're already there. Yeah, Ed Orgeron versus Rodney Garner. Who do you think is going to connect better with the parents in these communities and make the parents, who do you think the parents are going to feel safer putting their kids in the hands of?
Just for those that don't know, I've got my dad has a dog named Daisy that could have secured Marlon Wall's signature to Tennessee, as long as Daisy didn't show up drunk. That was the biggest issue. So that's one of the things that you have to factor in, that you think that Lane Kiffin has gotten behind. He said he's calmed down a little bit. I know the SEC has been concerned with the look because they asked me about it, that he was dating like a 25-year-old a couple of years ago. That doesn't bother me at all. I mean, heck, there's a hot 25-year-old that wants to date me. Just, here's my number, 86522. But, I mean, go ahead and give me a call. That's fine. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with that at all. Here's the one thing that we haven't mentioned that I have a problem with. Ultimately, Lane Kiffin quit twice. He quit on the Oakland Raiders by making brash statements and getting himself fired. I mean, he wanted to get fired. It was pretty obvious. It's like if Caleb came on here and said, Dave, you're no good fat son of a, I can't believe your stupid opinions. Well, I mean, you're just begging to get fired. That's what he was doing at Oakland. And he quit on Tennessee. And I'm sorry. I know coaches leave, and I know it's a free market society, but you quit on a commitment. And I know it's money, and I know it's business, but your commitment was to resurrect a proud program. And he quit. And he left. And I don't care if it's his dream job or not. And I would tell Lane this right now. You don't leave a program after a year. I don't care that the language was that bad where it was just an $800,000 buyout. That was stupid by the university's part. Ultimately, he's a quitter. So my concern would be you hire him at my school, Hooker U. You hire him at Hooker U, and he's my top paid pimp. And he, let's say, makes it to the national championship game. And he's the type of guy that Jerry Jones would love, right?
Right.
Okay. So Jerry Jones would go hire him, and Lane Kiffin, instead of finishing the job and winning the national championship, would bolt. Or maybe even go to another school that offered more money. That would be my one concern. I know that people think he's changed and matured, but listen, he's going to quit Ole Miss one day. He's going to win another 10 games. And he's going to have a better offer than Ole Miss, and he's going to quit Ole Miss. He is at heart a quitter. Now, one of the things on the message board that I wanted to bring up is that somebody mentioned he's always had good quarterback play. That is a surprising advantage that Lane Kiffin has over Josh Heupel that I didn't think would have been the case earlier this century.
Except for the first half of the 2008 season or of the 2009 season with Jonathan Crompton, he's always had good quarterback play. Not Jonathan Crompton's fault, really. Not really Lane Kiffin's fault. He had the wrong guy coaching him, as we found out. But
the kid was shattered because the previous coaching staff threw him under the bus.
Right.
I mean, I know that family really well, and I don't mind sharing some of that. The kid's confidence was shattered.
Yeah. No, I believe that. I believe that. So, no, you're right. That is kind of intriguing. I never thought about that, but I'm trying to think of when Lane's never really had bad quarterback play outside of that. His offenses have always been good. We're not being hard enough on Lane Kiffin quitting on Tennessee, though, Dave, because Dave,
it was just pretty hard.
No, because he didn't just quit on Tennessee. He quit on Tennessee after he lit the place on fire. So let's not forget what he does to Tennessee, Dave. He comes to Tennessee. he kicks off a significant portion of players from the team that were former recruits because he wanted to make room for his recruits. Remember that?
Right.
He pulls scholarships from other commitments. Taj Boyd refuses to go after Cam Newton, Bryce Petty, to get room for his guys.
Okay, unpopular opinion. I didn't have a problem with the Taj Boyd thing because I didn't think it fit his style. So I don't want to do hindsight 2020.
Okay, but he does that to make room for his. He does all of that to make room for his recruits, half of whom are felons, and the other half of whom really didn't care to play, like Tyler Brain. So he significantly depletes the roster, and then he bolts. So he bolts after he made the like. Let's be honest, Dave. Kiffin took over for Fulmer. Derek Dooley took over for Kiffin. You can feel however you want. You can feel however you want about Derek Dooley. Who inherited a worse roster? Kiffin from Fulmer or Dooley from Kiffin?
Dooley.
It's not close.
Dooley.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one class that pretty much didn't count because they were getting arrested at the pilot.
Yeah, exactly. So Dooley inherited, and by the way, Kiffin kicked off half the team or pulled half the scholarships to make room for those recruits that were all getting arrested at the pilot. I mean, and then he leaves. The best analogy, let's just say what it is. I don't like using these types of jokes, but it's like, it's the only analogy I can think of. Kiffin with Tennessee, he's a guy that farts in a crowded elevator and then walks off the elevator. I mean, that's what he did, isn't it? So, like. Are
you allowed to do that in a sauna? I'm asking for a friend.
I don't know.
No, it's worse than a sauna.
Okay, yeah, fine. He does it in a sauna and he walks out of the sauna. Yes, that was what Lane Kiffin did at Tennessee.
Steamy. It's no good.
So I think it's even worse when you think about it that way. It's not like he built Tennessee up, brought a bunch of talent in and left. No, he wrecked the roster and then he left.
Yeah. Now, we want to be real clear. Josh Heupel's not going anywhere that we know of. And we're talking about not necessarily at Tennessee, but if you're just an athletic director at your particular school and you have to choose between these two. So let's go to the poll question. What are people saying? And give me some good reasons online, and I will get to that. Now, Derek brings up a very good point. With a kicker having a bad quad, God help us, Mount Cody, shaking my head. If they beat Alabama that year, this conversation off one game is probably different. And Lane Kiffin, though, blew that because he had about 18 seconds left and the ball was it would have been, I think it was a 42-yard field goal. He had time and a timeout, took a timeout to the locker room back to Knoxville where he could have gotten closer. But that's a whole different argument.
I still maintain he didn't do that because he didn't want to get blamed if there was a call that he made that didn't work out. And I'm holding to that. But I don't think the conversation changes because he's still going to USC at the end of the year.
I just think that was his first big pressure situation as a coach.
Okay, but whether or not he wins or loses that game, that doesn't change the state of the program for Tennessee after he leaves. I think the LSU game a year later with Derek Dooley had a much bigger impact on the coach than the Alabama game did. What if Derek Dooley beats LSU in 2010?
Well, I'm just saying if we're having the conversation now and we're looking back at him beating Alabama in 2009, I think most of the people, if they were honest with themselves, would say they would take Kiffin over Heupel. But because that game went the way it did, I don't want to place too much on one game. Because that game went the way it did, Caleb, it's very debatable. And I would take Heupel. I would.
Yeah.
And some people have said this on the message board. Lane Kiffin would be in the top 3 of coaches that they would go after if Josh Heupel left. He certainly should be. I won't argue with that.
I mean, I would probably. I'm saying all this. We're nitpicking, comparing culture. I'm just saying Josh Heupel built such a great culture. But yes, I would go after Lane Kiffin if Josh Heupel left.
Okay, but no, that's not the question. Kiffin or Heupel? You got to hire one.
Heupel. Culture. Kiffin. I keep coming down. Kiffin. I think the personality of Kiffin that led to him getting a recruiting class with more felons than all SEC players. I think that personality is still there. He doesn't care about chemistry and culture. He gets mercenaries, and it's almost he runs a college football program almost the way Jerry Jones runs the Cowboys.
I still think there's a chance he ends up with the Cowboys for some reason. I don't know why. I don't think that would work well at all. All right. Stay tuned. Coming up on the program this day in Tennessee sports history. Also, we will have a stat of the day. Is Tim Banks the most important member of UT's football staff, football department? Tennessee's athletic department? I'm going to make the argument, yes. Bank on it. Tennessee has the best quarterback situation in the SEC. Yes, we said that, and they just lost Nico. How crazy is that? Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. I can't tell you how happy I am with my Jeep, and I can't tell you how happy I am with the fact that the customer service was unbelievable. I drove off the lot so happy. I get buyer's remorse for a pack of gum. I didn't get buyer's remorse on this at all. I felt like I got a fantastic deal. I loved working with the people there. They took care of me. Only took a couple hours and 2 different meetings. Let me take the Jeep home and give it a look-see and show it to the fam. And they were like, man, you got to get this. And my stepdad, who's worked in the car biz for a number of years, said, this is an incredible deal. Well, it's because they're East Tennessee's largest volume dealer, which gives them buying power. And don't forget, they'll have the car that you want, and they'll also have pre-owned vehicles, certified pre-owned and used vehicles. They've got your car right there at Ted Russell Ford and Ted Russell Lincoln. You can go to tedrussellford.net, tedrusselllincoln.net. They're on Parkside Drive and Kingston Pike, and they are tremendous. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
So I wrote a column about this, and I'm on the wrong side of the screen. So I wrote a column about this, touching base on it earlier in the week. Tennessee lost one of the top-rated quarterbacks in, the 2023 class?
Yep, 2023.
He was the number 2 overall behind a guy named Arch Manning. You may have heard of him. Nico Iamaleava was a splash type of get, a splash signee, a splash commitment, but he was also a very, very talented player. So you lost a very, very talented player, and Tennessee's quarterback situation is bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, Life Made Better. Their quarterback situation is the best in the SEC, and I'll take it a step further. Their quarterback unit depth, however you want to put it, is the best on Tennessee's football team. And that's with Tennessee losing Nico, because I think we all like Joey Aguilar. I think that he's probably going to be the starter, has some talent, and you would think would have some leadership moxie and some experience going through junior college and all that good stuff. And then you have 2 other guys. One is a 4-star in Merklinger, Jake Merklinger, and then McIntyre was a 5, correct?
Fringe 5, depending on where you went by.
Okay, so I don't even want to get into the fact that Faison Brandon could come into the fold. But Tennessee's quarterback situation, despite losing Nico, is absolutely the best in the SEC and is one of the best in the nation, which sounds insane to say, Caleb. But if Nico, let's just say as a prospect, was an A+, and Joey Aguilar, from all I hear, is at least a B+, then you've got solid backups in Merklinger. You've got your quarterback for the future in George McIntyre. Guys, sounds strange to say, but it's almost a golden era as far as Tennessee quarterbacks. It reminds me of the Brandon Stewart, Peyton Manning, Todd Helton days. And you're just not going to see this type of depth very often because of the transfer portal. Nobody, I mean, you can only play one quarterback. Nobody wants to sit and watch another dude play.
So I'll bring this up. And I have a column on this too, which is that Tennessee, if you guys look at it, they have the best backup quarterback situation in the SEC this year. Because you're right. I don't know any other SEC school that has 3 legitimate options to play quarterback. Now, somebody is going to jump on the message board, Dave, and go, they had 3 options last year because Gaston Moore was on the team. And I'm like, okay, like if yes, Gaston Moore was technically the backup, but Dave, if Nico Iamaleava had gone down, you and I both know Heupel would have turned to Merklinger at that point if he had to turn to him for like a period of time in the season. Like Gaston, yeah. So
well, I mean, I don't know that I would go that far because I think Gaston Moore could have manned the ship and knew what he was doing. I don't know yet. I'm not discounting him. I don't know Merklinger, but at some point you're probably making the move for the more talented guy. I'll give you that.
Right, exactly. So this year they have 3 legitimate starting SEC starting caliber quarterbacks. And that's rare. That was even rare back in the day. I mean, Dave, outside of 94 with Peyton Manning, Brandon Stewart, Todd Helton, and Jerry Colquitt, 4 guys, how often has Tennessee had more than, even in the former years, did they ever usually have more than 2 that you thought could legitimately start in the SEC?
No, and they would always say, you want to take a quarterback in every class, and I used to laugh at that because what quarterback wants to come if there's somebody starting above him? Sam says, I'll take B+ with 4 years experience over Nico all day long. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, and sometimes there was only one. I would think the only time you had like multiple options at quarterback was you could theoretically say 04 with Eric Ainge, Brent Schaefer, and then Rick Clausen coming in. I still question that Rick Clausen
wasn't any better than Gaston Moore.
Yes, I think Rick Clausen was severely
better. And Brent Schaefer was slight. He was small when he showed up and learned pretty quickly he had some character issues as well.
Yeah. I think that Rick Clausen, in his defense, not Rick Clausen, excuse me, Josh Heupel and Tennessee, to a certain degree, I really do think that I think the big thing this year is there's not going to be an issue in quarterback because, look, if Joey Aguilar is not going to work, Josh Heupel's not going to stick with him. He's got 2 other options. Josh Heupel has shown in the past he's willing to move on from a quarterback that's not working. Now, again, we can criticize the Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker decision, and I've beaten that drum, and I'm not going to stop beating it for as long as I live because I still think it's one of the most ridiculous decisions ever made by a coach. But Heupel did make a switch pretty quickly into the season that year. I mean, 2 games in, he said, all right, I'm going with Hendon Hooker. This guy's better. And so he is willing to do that. So if he's in that situation this year, then he's got multiple options to go to if something happens. And also, I want to point this out. No Tennessee quarterback has yet gone a whole season under Heupel without getting hurt and pulled from the game for at least a period of time. That had every single season under Heupel that's happened.
Yeah, but that's coincidental.
I think there are some layers.
How was Milton hurt?
Milton got hurt week 2 against Pittsburgh in the first season, and that's when Hendon Hooker came in, and Heupel decided Hendon was better.
Right, but how did he get hurt? I'm trying to remember.
I can't. It was on some play where he got hit late, and I think he fumbled. So
okay, well, I mean, there's nothing you could have done about Hendon Hooker's injury. That was a non-contact injury that just happened. So I don't think you're necessarily saying that Tennessee's definitely going to play a backup quarterback this year. but I definitely think you want one. There are going to be teams year in and year out. There are going to be 3 or 4 teams year in and year out. They lose their starting quarterback, and because of the transfer portal, they're done. You just might as well just call it a season. I mean, that's going to happen. It would be the equivalent of Michael Jordan getting hurt early in the season, when he did, actually, at one point. I mean, you're just not going to compete for a championship with a backup quarterback at 90% of the schools out there.
No, you aren't. By the way, that Bulls team got to the playoffs at 30-52 that year. But yeah, I mean, yes, I agree. I think Tennessee is a rare situation where that's not the case. And I thought that was more the case last year. I think if a quarterback gets hurt, they have options. I know people are worried about George McIntyre, but he's a scholarship quarterback on your roster. So if you have to go to him, shouldn't you be able to if he's a fringe 5-star?
Yeah. Now, I want to go. I want to go to a couple. There's a debate on the message board that Texas has a better quarterback situation. You could argue South Carolina has a better quarterback situation because they have better starting quarterbacks, right?
Right, because yes. And I'm not denying that.
Yeah, but we're taking this as a group. I don't think there's any question if you gave Josh Heupel truth serum that he would say, hey, I would take Arch Manning over the 3 guys I got, or I would take Lenore Sellers over the 3 guys I got. Would you argue that?
No, he would absolutely take Arch Manning, which is why it was funny that Nico wanted Lenore Sellers' money, because I think he would have taken I think he would have taken Lenore Sellers over Nico.
Probably. Maybe they could have worked that trade out with California, or with South Carolina, USC. I don't know. I think Sellers is going to be really good. I've talked to some NFL scouts about him, and he maybe is even better than I thought in the offseason, and from what what I saw last season. Archie Manning, though, however, is the cream of the crop, right?
Yeah, Archie Manning is the gold standard of the quarterbacks you want. So I think that when you consider Arch Manning as the gold standard, you would say that's probably the best. And Texas does have 2 other 4-star quarterbacks on the roster, a redshirt freshman and a true freshman. None of them have any sort of in-game experience, though, whereas Jake Merklinger has legitimate experience now in a system. So I would say with that in mind, you could look at the situation at Tennessee and say there's more experience on that roster, which is why I would say the quarterback situation is better. Both have one highly talented true freshman who hasn't played a game yet. So I think with all of this being said, I think it's hard to look at, and where this all came up, by the way, is that Will Balkus of CBS recently did a list on the top 10 backup quarterbacks in, I believe it was the SEC, and nobody from Tennessee was on there. So I kind of go down and look, and I'm like, okay, you can maybe say Tennessee doesn't have one of the top 10 backup quarterbacks if it's just your one number 2 quarterback. But how many have a number 2 and a number 3 option, which Tennessee has? That's just not a thing. And so with that in mind, I think that, again, Texas, that is true. That's a good one. Texas has 3 legitimate options in terms of highly touted recruits. Tennessee's, I believe, are more highly touted. I think George McIntyre is more highly touted than Carl Lacey or Trey Owens. So when you take that into account, I don't really think who are the 2 Texas backup quarterbacks, by the way, to Arch Manning. So when you take all of that into account, I don't think there's any way you could look at Tennessee's situation and think, wow, they're in really, really good shape. They have at the bare minimum 3 options of somebody who's bound to work out at quarterback. And if George McIntyre can't work out as a true freshman, if they absolutely have to go to him, well, then why'd you recruit him? I mean, I know he was a stick, but yeah.
Fair enough. This day in Tennessee sports history coming up. Also, Tim Banks, the most important member of UT's football staff and maybe athletic department with this season, because, listen, the guy may be losing a lockdown corner for the first part of the season, and he's definitely losing one of the better pass rushers in college football from last season. So he's going to have to do some things a little bit different. That'll be brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. 4 Downs will be brought to you by Ted Russell Ford. Is Josh Heupel more important than Rodney Garner? Any offensive coach? Any player? Danny White even? Also, Chaz Lanier did not go in the first round of the NBA draft. Are you surprised? Stay tuned. More after this. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is Off the Hook Sports.
It's a new year, a new day, And Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Welcome back to the program. Oh, trying to get Dave. We had a bit of a technical
Dave Hooker Show.
Here we go.
Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb Calhoun, the one, the only. Welcome back to the program. Please hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't done that, it means a lot. We got a ton of people there in the chat that apparently have not hit it quite yet. So we would appreciate you doing that. Coming up, Chaz Lanier not drafted. I can't say that I'm incredibly surprised. We'll get to that as well. Also, I do want to tackle this Steve Spurrier taking a shot at the Mannings once again. That just never gets old for him, I don't think. All right. I wrote a column that is on offthehooksports.com right now about how important Tim Banks is, about how he's going to have to be a little bit more creative than he was last year. Not like 2022 when he was very creative and just trying to manufacture some sort of defense that had very little to no talent. So, Caleb, I think that Tim Banks, and we'll look at some other figures, is the most important member of Tennessee's football program and the second most important member of Tennessee's athletic department. And let me tell you why, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree. I think he's a very, very good coach. I think Tennessee has some holes to fill. I think that he is capable of doing that, but he has to have a great year. I mean, he has to have a great year, and he wants to have a great year, and I do believe he's going to be hired away as a head coach one day, so you want to get everything you can out of him. But I don't believe Tim Banks is the guy that everybody hated in 2022. I believe that Tim Banks is a solid coach who can put together a wide array of defensive looks up front, and Tim Banks is Tennessee's defensive coordinator, by the way, Bevo's bodyguard. And I believe he can also continue to build a defense that people want to be a part of. I think he's really key. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's crucial. I think he's absolutely crucial. I think Tim Banks is we really underrate. Look, let's put this out here first. Now, this last year was a little bit different, but Josh Heupel wants a program that's going to be all offense first, right?
Yes.
The key on something like that is to make sure the side that you don't mind being a weaker side is as shored up as possible. A lot of times, that's where Tim Banks is absolutely key. It's kind of like an example I could use, like the Golden State Warriors were an offensive team. They focused on 3-point shooting and elite offensive juggernaut play. That's why Draymond Green was so crucial. They needed that defense. He was the one that provided the defensive presence to help offset what everybody else was focusing on. You need Tim Banks in this regard. In that regard, you need him to coach to what is being done by Josh Heupel, and he showed last year he could take it a step further by being the main guy as the coach and winning the games for Tennessee. I think Tim Banks is absolutely critical in that regard, and very, very, very underrated. I mean, it's not much different than from the reverse. Now I know early Nick Saban, not Nick Saban when he got Lane Kiffin, but you know this, Dave. Early Nick Saban was totally fine grounding and pounding and winning with defense, right?
Almost to a fault.
Yeah, almost to a fault. But that made the offensive coordinator crucial, right? That's why Jimbo Fisher was such a critical offensive coordinator for him, because Jimbo Fisher knew how to coach to that style of play. And he won a national title at LSU doing it. So I think Tim Banks, you could say, is kind of the same way on the other end. And you're right. I was one of those people that wanted him gone after the South Carolina debacle in 2022. I wasn't aware that South Carolina was probably cheating. And so, but now
when I didn't know the extent of Jeremy Banks either and the distraction that he was.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't know any of that until the next day. So when you take that into account, I'm with you. I think Tim Banks is absolutely crucial to this system. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's why, by the way, I think he is like he's one of the 5 highest paid assistants in college football now, I believe.
Yep. Well, I don't have a problem with that. I'm very high on him, and I think this is a monstrous year for him. So let's play a little bit of 4 Downs, brought to you by our good friends at Ted Russell Ford and Ted Russell Lincoln. You can go to tedrussellford.net, tedrusselllincoln.net. You will absolutely love the buying experience. So 4 Downs is right now.
Come on, guys, it's game time.
4 Downs. Can you count 4 downs? 1, 2, 3, 4. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right. So let's break them down individually. The most important people in Tennessee's football program and athletic department. May I go ahead and throw this disclaimer out there? I'm taking out all other sports, including Rick Barnes. And it's not a slide on Rick Barnes, but the bottom line is football makes 90% of the money. Okay. So I'm not discounting them. I mean, you could probably make an argument you'd rather lose Tim Banks and get a good coordinator than Rick Barnes if Barnes has another 5 years in him, but we have to factor in his age as well. So not a knock on Barnes at all. But let's take a look at the most important people in Tennessee's athletic department and football coaching staff, as it is brought to you by our good friends at Ted Russell Ford and Ted Russell Lincoln. Go to tedrussellford.net, tedrusselllincoln.net.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super Savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Employee pricing is here. You pay what we pay on all new Ford models. Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All righty, here we go. 4 Downs right now. Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right.
Coop here. First down.
All right. I think most people would say that Rodney Garner is very integral to this defense, to Tennessee's recruiting efforts, but he's not more important than Tim Banks. Now, going hand in hand, I think the worst case scenario, if Banks got a head coaching job, he'd take Garner as a defense coordinator. That would be bad for Tennessee. So, but Rodney Garner is not more important than Tim Banks. Agreed?
Agreed. All due respect in the world to Rodney Garner. I said earlier, like, if he was in my home recruiting my kid, that would be a selling point for me to have my kid go play for Rodney Garner. But at the same time, I mean, a defensive line coach doesn't deal with a lot. Okay, they're more recruiting than and then just coaching up toughness, and I just feel like you could replace that fairly easily.
Fair enough. All right, what down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Any offensive coach, including Josh Heupel?
Well, okay, I would take Josh Heupel over Tim Banks. It's Josh Heupel's program, but
who's more important this year? Because my argument is with Josh Heupel, he's had subpar quarterback play the past 2 years, and Tennessee was still 6th, 7th in the SEC in total offense.
I think that's a testament to how good of a coach Josh Heupel's been. If you lose him, then you're not going to have them being 6th, 7th in the SEC in total offense.
I agree. I guess what I'm saying is Tim Banks is I think you're at least going to be 6th or 7th with Heupel. I think you could be really, really good. But with Tim Banks, there is a little bit more uncertainty because of what happened in 2022. And they weren't just bad in the Columbia game. They were bad before that. So I think Banks is every bit as important as Josh Heupel.
I would think that makes Josh Heupel more important. If you're telling me with Heupel, your floor is 6th or 7th in the SEC, well, then what's your floor without Heupel? I mean, if you don't have Heupel, you could be 14th in the SEC in offense.
Yeah, but you're just not going to win a lot of games if you're 12th in the SEC, and Tennessee has been that on defense.
Okay, but I agree. Let's throw this out. This year, Josh Heupel suspended for the year because he did something stupid. Okay, let's just say that hypothetically happens, all right? Let's just say tomorrow we find out Josh Heupel suspended for the year because he broke some rule. Or tomorrow we find out Tim Banks is suspended for the year because he broke some rule. Which one would likely generate a worse record for Tennessee?
I would say Heupel's absence would be more significant. I just think Heupel is more given.
But then you can't say Tim Banks is more important than Heupel.
Okay. I think regular season he is.
I think now if you compare the rest of the offense, Joey Halzle, those guys, yes, but we're acknowledging both of us that Josh Heupel's absence would have a bigger deal on the program than Tim Banks.
Yeah. Now, Gino brought up a good point. Hot take: Heupel slowed the offense down to keep promise of elite defense. There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, Tennessee's defense was very good last year because its offense wasn't running at a breakneck pace. I don't know if that's a change because you had Nico and you had Joe the year before, or if that's where Josh Heupel wants to go to have a balanced attack. Perhaps it is, but there's something about scoring 50-something points in 3 quarters. It's pretty impressive.
Oh, there is. I mean, yes, and I think it's not so much how he played to the defense last year. I think it's about how he adjusted and generated the best running game in the SEC because of that. So, I mean, we give him a lot of credit for that. But yeah, anybody else on the offense, I agree with you. Josh Heupel, no. Everybody else on the offense, yes, Tim Banks is more important than, including Joey Halzle.
Actually brings up a good point. Who is your dream staff picks if you could have your pick of anyone? We'll dive into that. Let's continue to this Tim Banks thing. All right, what down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right, third down is this. Any player. Tim Banks is more important than any player. If you wanted to make an argument going into last year, you could have said Nico. Now we know in retrospect. You could have said James Pierce because he was projected as the number 1 overall NFL pick. But Caleb, there's not a single player on this football team that's anywhere close to as important as James.
No. You mean Tim Banks?
Tim Banks.
Yeah, I agree. Tim Banks is more important than any player. Tim Banks is more. If you're asking me, and if I'm running Tennessee, and you're saying I have to suspend a player of your choice for the year or Tim Banks, I will be like, I'll suspend the player of your choice. I don't care who he is. I don't care if he's the quarterback. I'm like, there is not one single player more important than Tim Banks to this team.
Let's throw this out there because there's still some kickback with Tim Banks. Not everybody's a fan. Adam says, honestly, Banks has been blown out at least one game every year, including the Ohio State loss last season. That was kind of a perfect storm, Caleb, in my opinion, in that Dylan Sampson got hurt and Ohio State was the best, most talented team in the nation, and it was at their place. I didn't really blame Tim Banks for that.
No, I mean, I blame Tim Banks for not being creative in that moment. He still tried to win with just Jimmys and Joes, but you can't attack Banks for that and let Heupel in the offense off the hook any more than you can against Georgia, because in both instances, Tennessee only scored 17 points.
Here we go.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Okay. I think you would agree that nobody's more important than Danny White. He brought Josh Heupel in. He brought Kim Caldwell in. He's created an environment where Rick Barnes isn't gone. And I can go ahead and tell you that Rick Barnes would have been gone, like he flirted with UCLA. He would have been gone under the previous athletic director. He didn't feel like basketball was getting the proper attention, and he would have been gone. So I give White credit for Barnes, even though he didn't hire him. So Danny White's the most important guy. But I would say that after that, there's a real debate between Heupel and Banks. And because I do believe Heupel turns over the defense to Banks, and Banks is essentially the head coach of the defense. So I think there's a real debate there, but I think you would agree Danny White's the most important, right?
Yes, but okay, maybe. But in terms of like, we're doing this whole thing, again, it's about value. It's who's suspended for a year. If you sit there and say this year Danny White can't do anything related to the athletic department for a year because he broke some rule, I'd still rather that if I'm a Tennessee fan than Tim Banks gets suspended for a year.
Okay. Well, and barring something unforeseen, which I guess could be Rick Barnes retiring, that wouldn't be completely unforeseen. But if you had to hire a basketball coach at the end of the year, other than raising money, what is Danny White really doing right now?
Yeah, nothing. Just promoting the program and going on interviews and whatever.
Yep.
So, yeah, at that point,
he really likes the microphone.
He does. And so when you take that into account, I'm going to disagree. I'm taking Tim Banks over Danny White. Not Josh Heupel, but Danny White, yes. Okay. Yes.
General Ursa said, I thought Philip Fulmer was AD when Barnes was flirting with UCLA. He was.
That's why he was flirting with UCLA.
Yes. And he almost took that job. And I think if it would have continued, that basketball took a big backseat to football, which it should take somewhat of a backseat, but it shouldn't be overt. If that continued, Caleb, I can go ahead and tell you that Rick Barnes would not be Tennessee's head coach right now, but he'd still be coaching somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. And Rick Barnes and Tennessee got lucky that they had that year right before Rick Barnes was flirting with UCLA. Tennessee had just reached number 1, had a 31 season, reached the Sweet 16. Rick Barnes, he had enough leverage for the boosters to want to throw a lot of money at him. Also, I mean, let's just call it what it is. Beyond the athletic director, Rick Barnes just culturally is just, I mean, if you're a booster at Tennessee, like, is there a better coach you'd want in your environment? Is there a better fit for an environment than Rick Barnes?
No, I think you definitely want Rick Barnes a part of your program, a part of your athletic department. I don't think there's any question about that.
He's basically what they hoped they were getting in Buzz Peterson.
Huh?
You know, a guy from Appalachia, from the region, very connected to the region, knows ball. I mean, basically Rick Barnes was what they thought they had in Buzz Peterson in 2001.
Yep. There you go. All right. It is time for, what do we got now? This day in Tennessee sports. Okay. Let's do this day in Tennessee sports history. And I got a special, when we get to stat of the day, a guy who wore the number 65 that you can't look it up. No Googling. Fair?
I mean, I already know it, so too late. But
thanks a lot.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, this day in Tennessee sports history, what do you got?
On this day, back in 1976, one Chad Clifton was born. Yes, it's Chad Clifton's birthday. Chad Clifton is officially 49 years old. Also on this day, back in
best offensive lineman of all time.
I think so too, actually. I actually think so too. On this day, back in 1978, Travis Stevens was born. So it's a happy birthday to Travis Stevens and Chad Clifton, 47 and 49, respectively.
Oh my goodness. No, that's not possible.
Yeah.
That Travis Stevens is pushing 50. Are you sure that's right?
Well, Stevens is 47, yeah, and Clifton's 49. And Stevens is still like, is that one of the best underdog stories in Tennessee history? I mean, there was literally like he can't shoulder the load. He can't get the 30 to 40 carries in the SEC. And literally he was getting 30 to 40 carries a game in the SEC.
It is, but it didn't take me long to believe that he could do it. Yeah, when he, they didn't play Florida that year because of 9/11. But by the first month of the season, I thought as long as he doesn't get injured, because he is smaller, he's going to be fine. Because he ran with conviction. He put his foot in the ground and he went in a step, and that was where he was going. He might get rocked, but that was where he was going. So it didn't take long. Okay, I'll go ahead and do my this day in Tennessee sports history.
I just also want to point out that it's also easy to run with conviction when you have the line that he had that year. The hole was always obvious from the minute he took the handoff.
All right. So great players who wore the number 65 at Tennessee. It's 65 days until football time at Tennessee. Bonnie Hodge was the first in 1937. Who could forget Bonnie? Paul Clark, 1939. I'm going to get to a good one. Al Rotella. He was a good one. And then we move forward, and you've got Steve DeLong. Pretty good. But here's the one that stands out above them all. Won a championship at Tennessee, but not as a player, as a coach. Philip Fulmer wore the number 65, and you already knew that?
Yes, I already knew that.
All right. 65 days until football time in Tennessee. We're almost there.
We are 65 days away, guys. That's what summer's for, countdowns.
General Ursa says Travis Stevens is my favorite running back, not the most talented, but I love his heart and desire. I agree with that. The way he ran was just...
He ran hard.
Yeah, he looked like a guy who would dance around a lot like Barry Sanders, right?
He did.
He ran like a 3-yard back. And, man, there were a couple times he got rocked. And I will tell you, too, that I'm not going to name the reporter, but let's just say one reporter thought so little of him that you could read it in his writing, and it became very ugly and almost vindictive. And that reporter, before the 9/11 postponed game against Florida, Travis Stevens had a big game the week before. Do you remember that?
Against Vanderbilt?
I think so, yeah. And this reporter said to him, Travis started it and said, it wasn't a bad game, was it, Saturday? Just playful. And he goes, yeah, let's see how you do against Florida. That was completely unprofessional and just gives you an idea of the mindset around the program. And I think it was within the program, too, of a lot of people didn't think he could get it done, and he did. So kudos to him. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Arch Manning is now in the crosshairs of Steve Spurrier. Just another Manning that gets a shot taken at him by Steve Spurrier. Are we surprised? No. Newbert Collision Center for nearly 50 years. Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. Stay tuned. 2 minutes off the hook sports. You're not going to believe what Steve Spurrier had to say about Arch Manning. Stay tuned. Off the hook sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Portions of the program brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. Hound Dogs of Knoxville. You'll absolutely love them. And they've got a big-time giveaway. You can win a complete canopy, seats, everything. You'll be the envy of all the other tailgaters. And they're giving that away for July 4th. So you got to get down there and register and tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. We would greatly appreciate that. All right. So I just can't get enough Steve Spurrier. I hope he lives to like 200 or at least outlives me. And because he's always got these quippy fun things that he throws out there. I want to get to that. Our friends at National Fitness Center remind you that unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. But before we get to that Steve Spurrier comment, I want to get to the stat of the day, and it's brought to you by Newbert Collision Center.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, what do you got? Stat of the day.
Dave's all like, oh, got all these number 65s for you. But only one was an All-American. Can you guess who it was?
Oh, I had the list pulled up. No, I don't know. I didn't see it. Who was it?
Steve DeLong was the only player to wear number 65 and become an All-American for Tennessee. Interestingly enough, Steve DeLong won the Outland Trophy back in 1964, the first Outland Trophy winner for Tennessee also.
Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Colton said, we got to get David better set up instead of his old man chair. I like this chair. It helps my lumbar. You like my chair?
Looks like a corporate CEO chair.
Yeah. I'm like T. Boone Pickens or something. Let's go ahead and put on the poll question. Do you like Dave's chair? Yes or no? And then we're going to dive into this Steve Spurrier thing, which is just classic. And when I say classic, I mean classic. Because Steve Spurrier took pride in taking shots at Philip Fulmer and Peyton Manning, neither of which were involved in not recruiting Steve Spurrier to Tennessee and running a pro-style offense, which is what Steve Spurrier wanted out of Johnson City, which is why he went to he went to Florida, won a Heisman Trophy there. So I think it's twofold. I think he's always got kind of I don't really like Tennessee all that much because they didn't recruit me. But I do think that there was some gamesmanship being played. I know he would call John Adams the week before the Tennessee game, and he'd say things like, well, you got to love that Pat Summitt. She knows how to win a championship. And that was before Philip Fulmer won a championship. There was the, it's good. Peyton Manning's coming back for another year. Maybe be a 3-time Citrus Bowl MVP. That was a pretty good line. And then there was, can't spell Citrus Bowl without a U and a T. He had a bunch of good lines. And he hasn't stopped. You just haven't heard from him as much. He has a really nice upscale sports bar, and those sayings are on the coasters. Now, there's sayings about Florida State and other teams too. It's not just purely a Rip Tennessee thing. But it's not over. And it continues now with Arch Manning. What the H? Brought to you by Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
What the H?
Wow, I never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Trevor says, have the chair covered in red velvet with a gold tassel trimming like a king. I like that. Down with the haters. Amen, brother. All right. What did Steve Spurrier have to say? What the H?
So Steve Spurrier kind of took a very logical shot at one Arch Manning recently when talking about all the hype surrounding Texas this year. And I got to say, he kind of has a point, but which he always kind of had a point. That's the part nobody wanted to admit, was he always kind of had a point with his little gags, didn't he?
Yes.
And so here's what he said about Arch. He said, quote, and this was on another duly noted podcast. We've had Pat Dooley on this show. And he says, quote, people picking Texas to win the SEC in football. They've got Arch Manning already win the Heisman too. And my question is, if he was this good, how come they let Quinn Ewers play all this time last year?
I think there's some truth to that. I thought that Arch Manning would overtake Quinn Ewers early in the season and maybe even in the preseason. Ewers held on to that job longer than I thought he would. And I don't think that's a great sign for Arch Manning. I mean, let's face it. If Arch Manning's a B+ quarterback, that's not good enough coming from that family and playing for the University of Texas. If he's not better than Quinn Ewers, then you've got a problem. You've missed. And missing on a Manning is hard to do. And I don't think they're going to miss. I think he's going to be elite. But I was a little surprised that Arch didn't win the job out of the chute or win it at some point earlier in the season over Ewers. I didn't think Ewers was that good.
I think coaches are slaves to seniority sometimes.
I agree.
Ewers decided to come back, and it was like he had already been the starter for 2 years, and it's like, what are you going to do? Bench him his last year in favor of the freshman phenom? You're not going to do that. And a lot of this was about keeping the team together. I mean, let's just talk about this. Tim Tebow was a freshman phenom, and we all knew that he was the perfect fit for Urban. I think the minute you saw Florida land Tim Tebow and you saw Urban Meyer's all, but you were like, they're going to be unstoppable, weren't you? When he gets there. Urban Meyer still started Chris Leak over Tim Tebow his senior year. Leak's senior year and Tebow's freshman year. And I think it was kind of that route. Now wait
a second. I didn't have a problem with Chris Leak starting the majority. Well, he started every game, and then Tebow came in. Tebow was not an accurate passer. Leak was. I mean, I think between the 10s that Leak was probably a better option at the time. So I guess I would take umbrage with that.
Not for Urban Meyer's spread, though. That's the thing. Urban Meyer had to make so many concessions in his spread offense for Chris Leak. I mean, the fact that he won a national title in 2006, we don't talk about that enough. That was it's one of the better coaching job national titles of all time, given the fact that he tweaked his spread offense so much for Chris Leak, who was a bad fit for it. Charlie Strong won that national title with Florida's defense that year. But I think that where I'm getting at is, I think there was a seniority factor on why they did it. So I'm not so sure Spurrier has he does have a point, but it's more of a shot at Sark for making that decision than anything else. And look, there's some personal ties here, because for those who don't know the story, and I know Dave knows the story, in 1995, Tennessee's going to play Florida in the Swamp. Sports Illustrated has a cover that they're about to release with Peyton Manning on the cover of it. And I think you know about that story, Dave, right? Where Sports Illustrated had Peyton Manning on the cover of their magazine. We're ready to send it out. Everybody knew it. Florida got wind of it. They knew Peyton Manning was going to be on the cover. And that's when Florida scored 36 straight points, or 41 points in the second half in the Swamp. And after trailing 30-21 at halftime, beat Tennessee 62-36. And Spurrier was leaving Danny Warfel in the fourth quarter and running up the score. Sports Illustrated came back, switched it, and put Danny Warfel on the cover and not Peyton Manning right after that. And
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, that's a real story that happened. Sports Illustrated was planning to put Peyton Manning on their cover, and they decided to put Danny Warfel on the cover in Florida after Steve Spurrier in Florida in 95 torched Manning in his first start. By the way, it wasn't even Manning's fault. He dropped 36 points. Not his fault that John Chavis gave up 62 points. But that was what happened there. And I think Spurrier has always taken umbrage with... For those who don't know, Spurrier is not that much into recruiting. You know that, Dave. He didn't care about recruiting. He hates that aspect of college football. He just wants to call plays.
Great.
He's always had disdain for high school recruits coming in with a ton of hype without producing anything. That's always been an issue of his. And he wants to go out of, as a coach, he always wanted to go out of his way to humiliate recruits that get that level of hype. That's why he loved taking shots at Peyton Manning during that time and loved owning Peyton Manning.
Yeah, but the sad part about it is that Peyton Manning would have taken that offense to another level, and he didn't have the ego that Steve Spurrier detested.
He didn't. It wasn't his fault. Spurrier hated the hype he was getting. And I mean, again, I think we would both agree that, like, entering Manning's sophomore year, Danny Warfel was a junior and had been more productive to that point. So I think Spurrier felt the type of way that Manning might be on the cover and not Danny Warfel. And I think he had no problem going out of his way to embarrass Tennessee in that game. I mean, remember, there was a lot of criticism that he left, that he kept scoring at will, which was funny because then the next year when they played at Neyland Stadium, just to make a point, he set on a lead when he got up 35-0, remember? And you know, Tennessee, to this day, I love Tennessee fans saying, oh, Tennessee and Peyton Manning fought back and only lost 35-29. I'm like, okay, if Spurrier wanted to, he could have put that game, he could have scored 3 more touchdowns. He chose to sit on that lead.
Well, he had a really good running game that year, so it easy to rely on that once he had that sort of lead. And I think it was smart moves. I mean, I don't know if it's motivated by ill will, but that game was not close, even though it ended up, 35-28?
35-29.
Yeah.
That game was not that close.
It was not that close at all. I mean, you could tell, pardon me, by being around Tennessee's football team afterwards, that did not feel like a close loss, one that you build on whatsoever. So, but is the Steve Spurrier thing funny, or has it gotten old?
I think it's still funny because Steve Spurrier, the only way it wouldn't be funny is if his jokes got old, but he actually makes the best. He's still, like, his quips are usually relevant, aren't they? And I think that's why they're funny. I mean, it'd be one thing if he was still making a joke about Tennessee going to the Citrus Bowl in the mid-90s, but he's not.
He's topical. He's changing up his act. I like that. What the H? And it's brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Where do you stand? Hot or cold? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. CityHeatandAir.com. On Off the Hook Sports.
Caleb, were you surprised that Chaz Lanier was not drafted in the first round of the NBA draft last night?
I was, but the funny thing is, I think they got it right not taking him in the first round, interestingly enough. But I was, because he was projected as a first-round pick. I happen to think Chaz Lanier is a bit overrated, but I was shocked that he was not a first-round pick.
Tell you what it is. Really simple. He's got a hitch in a shot. And I pointed it out. And I thought it would be more of a factor in SEC play and during the season last year. It wasn't. But he holds the ball out in front of him and has a weird shot that's going to be easily blockable by guys in the NBA that are more athletic and 3 or 4 inches taller on the perimeter. So I think that was the glaring weakness, that when you watched his game, you're like, hey, he's pretty good here, he's pretty good there, he's pretty good. But he's got that weird shot. So do you completely, and listen, when it comes to completely reworking a shot, that can go either way, guys. I mean, you can rework a shot and it turns out fantastic. Michael Jordan's a great example. He reworked his shot, turned into a very solid outside shooter. Not elite outside shooter, but
I might debate it. I mean, he's not a great 3-point shooter, but he was the best mid-range shooter of all. He's the best long 2 shooter in NBA history, Michael Jordan.
Well, yeah, but I said 3. So I mean,
outside, but yeah.
No, I said 3. But I mean, well, when I say outside, I mean 3.
You mean 3? Okay.
So, but I mean, he's not. Yeah, no, he was a great mid-range shooter. I mean, he was a very good. Obviously, he was elite taking it to the rack. He was very good as a mid-range shooter, and he was good. Is the way I would put it, as a 3-point shooter. But that wasn't his game, and he didn't want to rely on that. I've heard interviews about that, but I think the other concern about Chaz Lanier is he's shown that he can take it to the rack on a couple of occasions, but he hasn't done it consistently. So if I'm an NBA GM, I'm concerned about that.
Oh, I am too. I am too.
Contact?
I'm sorry?
Does he not like contact?
I think there was I think I criticized him on this throughout the year, that I'm with you. I didn't think he loved contact. And I also thought, and this was a big thing for me, I think in big moments, he shrunk more often than he didn't. Now, you do have a great point with the way Chaz Lanier played in this one, because, or played against certain teams, because when he faced Florida, Florida had their length. I mean, he was 1 of 5 from 3 in the SEC title game when he faced Florida. And then when Tennessee was number 1 and had their first loss of the year, which was to Florida, he was 1 of 9 from 3, and they lost by 30. So, and Florida won because they were tall and athletic. And I'm with you. I think he has trouble against athletic, lengthy teams. I think that's caused him issues his whole time. And I also think there was an issue of he was a bit of a front runner. I think he oftentimes didn't meet the moment. Houston in the NCAA tournament, in the Elite Eight, Tennessee's loss, they play a really elite defense. They get in Chaz Lanier's head early. He has 17 points, but Dave, he was 4 of 18 from the field and 2 of 12. And I think once he faced elite defensive teams, once he faced teams with length, and once the moment got a little tough, I think he shrunk.
Hot or Cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Several SEC players went ahead of Chaz Lanier. Should they have? I hate to say this, but this is going to be a pretty easy one for me, because I don't have a problem with any of them going in front of them. It's Hot or Cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment, like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
All righty. Number 1, Trey Johnson. He's better than Chaz.
He's much better. And by the way, here's a funny. Trey Johnson was poorly coached at Texas last year. He's 6'6", shot 39.7% from 3, but didn't shoot well from the field from 2 because he didn't get he didn't take, his shot selection wasn't the best, and that came down to coaching. But he's significantly better than Chaz.
I think it's going to be pretty easy with him. I think he's going to be a spot up shooter in the NBA.
I think so too.
Unlike Chaz Lanier, I don't think he's going to be asked to take it to the rack. So I think he's in a pretty good position. All right, Jeremiah Fears. Don't be scared.
So Jeremiah Fears he's wildly athletic, so he's probably better fit for the NBA. But I always have a red flag if a guard is 28% from three in college. That was only 1 year, so maybe it's just not enough of a sample size. But in terms of his actual eye test, yeah, he's better.
I don't have an argument with that.
That's hot.
All right, Colin Murray Vols, second to third junior Esquire.
No, he's a power forward who plays he's a 6'7" power forward. He has no finesse in his game, and if you're an undersized power forward, you have to have finesse. He doesn't have it, and Chaz Lanier is better than him. And I also have a rule, Dave, and you can tell me if I'm crazy on this. It's actually a Dick Vitale rule, and I had this rule with Ben Simmons, which is this: if you're a top 10 NBA pick, you're good enough to get any college team you play on to the NCAA tournament. Not go anywhere in the NCAA tournament, but to get them to the NCAA tournament.
Boy, nice point on. I'll say this about Murray and Bowles. I still think Murray Bowles is better, but you give him, I think you would agree with this, you give him 2 or 3 more inches and he's a lot better.
A lot better. Significantly.
See, here's my thing with him. I know exactly what I'm getting out of him. I don't know what I'm getting out of Chaz Lanier. Am I projecting him as a spot-up shooter that has a hitch in his shot, or is he going to take it to the rack and be a little bit of both? I don't know what I'm getting. I want to know what I'm getting in the first round of the NBA draft. I don't mind taking who's the guy that likes to kick people in the crotch, plays for the Warriors?
Oh, Draymond?
Yeah, I don't mind taking Draymond Green in the second round. I don't mind taking Ben Simmons in the second round. We'll see what happens. But in the first round, I want to know exactly what you're doing. General Ursa says, agree with Caleb. Chaz was good, but didn't deliver in the big games. When we needed him the most, Chaz would have been a great complementary player to go with Dalton. Can you imagine if they had Chaz Lanier and Dalton Connect on the same team?
Oh, my gosh.
I don't even care about Igor and the other dude.
Yeah.
Who's the other guy? Darling Stone Dubar? Yeah. I don't even care. I mean, you don't even need them on the team. If you had Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier, and Dalton Connect, you're one of the favorites to win the national champion. Fair?
That would have been, if Chaz Lanier's three-point shooting was there, that's how they could have beaten Purdue with Zach Edey. Is shoot him out of the building, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. They maybe needed to shoot one of their post players. Tennessee did. But anyway. Maybe just wound him a little bit.
You're insane for saying that. But
his name again?
Jonas, he already played like he was shot.
Yeah.
Why shoot him? He played like he had both legs shot anyway.
Caleb just said it. Jonas Sadu should be shot for the way he played.
No, I did not. All right, so
all right, who we got next?
Walter Clayton Jr., point guard from Florida. I mean, yes, he should have been a much higher pick than he was. He was the 18th pick. I'd have had him as a top 10 pick. I watched him play all year. That dude is a baller.
How tall is he?
6'2".
Yeah, I'll take him. I do think the Gilgeous Alexander kid.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
Yeah, I think he probably helped him a little bit. And I think you could see the resurgence of the point guard. There was a time when you had to have a great point guard to have a great team. And I think you could see some of that. We need some more John Stockton.
John Stockton was a product of an offense that was very cutting edge. Okay, did nobody ever notice that when John Stockton retired,
that wasn't cutting edge? They just threw it in the post.
No, it was that easy pick and roll that was manipulating NBA rules. Did anybody notice when John Stockton retired, Darren Williams went to Utah and also was putting up the same numbers at point guard, and he's not that good of a point guard either. So I think he just was lucky to play in that system for so long when the NBA didn't allow zone defense.
I'm gonna pass on that comment about John Stockton. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. I stole that from Kendrick.
There's one last SEC player that was ahead of him, Asa Newell. I think he's better out of Georgia.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's hot.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, broadcasting live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios for Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports. We've got an exciting announcement, a new relationship that is going to be able to help us promote the show further, bring in some big-time guests. And we'll have coming up, we'll have our fall rundown of regular daily guests. So a lot going on. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done